It might be hard to believe, but the original Gears of War came out 10 years ago. Since then, it's been an exciting ride through Sarah, kicking Locust butt and learning the story of Marcus Phoenix and his companions. Now with Gears of War 4, players can come back for more and continue the story, which jumps 25 years later and revolves around Marcus's son, JD. Hi, I'm Kyle Stover with the Leaderboard, and we're here to check out the series that gave Halo a run for its joystick. So rev up those chainsaws and ready your gnashers, because we've got 107 facts about Gears of War. Let's get started. Number 1. Gears of War is a series of third-person shooter games originally created by Epic Games, the company behind the beloved Unreal Tournament franchise. Development of the original trilogy was led by lead designer Cliff Bleszinski, also known as Cliffy B. Number 2. Development of Gears of War began as far back as 2002. The game originally began as a spin-off of Unreal Tournament called Unreal Warfare, a game that was strictly multiplayer with an emphasis on class-based combat. But development on the game wasn't very consistent, as Epic was also developing Unreal Championship and Unreal 2003, which they had prioritized over Unreal Warfare. By the time the team returned to Unreal Warfare, they had come to realize how much the shooter genre had changed, especially with the growing popularity of single-player campaigns. This is when they decided to start fresh with Warfare, removing it outright from the Unreal brand. Fact number 3. At one point in its development, Gears of War was going to be a vehicle-based game with an on-foot component. Oddly enough, the final game featured no drivable vehicles whatsoever, save for a very brief on-the-rails driving section in the campaign mode. Number 4. Gears was originally going to be a first-person shooter, but when Cliffy B saw some of the graphic tests, he decided to change the perspective to third-person shooter after being shown the impressive amount of detail that the Unreal Engine 3 could provide for the game's characters. Number 5. According to Cliff, Gears of War was inspired by a trip he took to London after his first marriage fell apart and sent him into a downward spiral of depression. Sometimes our darkest moments can spark our brightest ideas. Number 6. Cliff cites the Legend of Zelda series as a huge influence on the game's narrative and world-building aspects. He even stated that the diverse set of tools and weapons used in specific scenarios in Gears of War were based on Link's personal context-specific gear he always has on him. Number 7. Cliff got the idea for Gears of War's then unique cover-based combat mechanics while playing a game of paintball in his real life. In that moment, he realized that popular shooters of the time didn't quite capture the reality of combat, with unreal tactics like circle strafing and crouch jumping. He thought grounding the shooter genre in reality would provide a new and interesting perspective on the ever-growing shooter genre. Number 8. The cover-based combat system was perfected by extensively studying 2 other games at the time. The first was a small but flawed PlayStation 2 game with an emphasis on cover-based combat called Kill Switch. They merged this with the Bionic Commando's point-to-point movement to create a cover-based combat system that would become a staple in gaming history. Number 9. When beginning development on Gears of War, Epic started things out with a more sci-fi approach, after which the developers began creating rules such as, quote, no laser guns and no aliens, end quote. They did this not only to ground it a bit more in reality, but to make it stand out from the other shooter games at the time, most of which were set in the sci-fi genre. Number 10. Originally, they were going to have a laser gun in the game, but decided to have a military tech based on the equipment used by the US military station in Vietnam. Sorry, laser. Number 11. Though he was the lead designer, Cliff Bleszinski didn't always get his way when designing the game. He originally opted for the soldiers to have realistic body proportions, and for the game to not feature any skull designs due to their overuse in shooters at the time. Ironically enough, the game's large muscular soldiers and overabundance of skulls are some of the franchise's most identifiable iconography. Number 12. The game's antagonists were originally called Geists, but Nintendo had just released a title for the GameCube called Geist, so the developers scrapped the name to avoid any and all legal ramifications they could have faced. Another name that was considered was Worms, but that didn't stick for very long. One thing the Worms name did give the team was the idea that the locusts emerged from beneath the ground, and that, my friend, is what brainstorming is all about. Number 13. The team spent a year on Marcus Phoenix's design, which went through several iterations, some of which can be seen in a few of the game's earliest trailers. They covered the character in scars to give him that worn-out soldier look. Number 14. Much like Unreal Tournament, Gears of War was originally going to be a PC exclusive title. That is, until Microsoft realized Halo 3 would not be finished until 2007. Microsoft needed a killer app for the Xbox 360 in order to take advantage of the 2006 holiday season, the final uncontested holiday season the Xbox 360 would have before the imminent release of its competition, the PlayStation 3 and the Nintendo Wii. Seeking a bigger budget, Epic signed a deal with Microsoft, hoping to create the Xbox's next Halo, though Epic would retain the rights of the Gears of War IP for the time being. Number 15. While preparing to pitch Gears of War to Microsoft, Cliff did push-ups in his hotel room while blasting Eminem's Lose Yourself. Aspiring game developers, take note. Number 16. When Microsoft was finalizing the specs for the Xbox 360, they originally had intended for the console to have 256 megabytes of RAM. That is, until Epic showed Microsoft what Gears would look like on those specs. To put it simply, it wasn't pretty at all. Epic urged Microsoft to up the RAM to a more reasonable 512 megabytes. Microsoft gave in to Epic's peer pressure, and the change cost them a hefty $1 billion to implement into the system's specs. Number 17. The game's signature weapon, the Lancer Assault Rifle, was almost cut from the game altogether. Microsoft's Peter Moore thought the chainsaw bayonet was too violent for the feeble and impressionable minds of the masses. Cliff and his team fought tooth and nail until the iconic gun was added back into the game just before the game's unveiling at E3 2006. Contrary to Moore's feelings about the Lancer, Microsoft's own Bill Gates personally approached Cliff after the E3 conference and told him he personally loved the Lancer's chainsaw bayonet. Number 18. Cliff had been pushing for a chainsaw gun in the video game since 1997. He first pitched the idea with a game that he wanted to develop called Overfiend. Well, Cliff, dreams really do come true. Number 19. The Locusts originally had their own answer to the COG's Lancer rifle. Their Hammerburst assault rifle originally had a drill bayonet, but this was sadly cut, leaving those filthy groundwalkers with a significant advantage. Number 20. General Rom nearly didn't make it into the game's final cut, coming in as a last-minute addition to the game. That being said, his character model is essentially that of a Theron guard, but colored black. Number 21. About 90% of Gears of War's development was spent on the campaign mode alone. The multiplayer suite was tacked on as a last-minute afterthought. This afterthought went on to become a beloved favorite of the Xbox Live community for years to come. Number 22. Cliff originally opted for dead players to only drop their weapons if their killer finished them off with an execution, as a way to incentivize the game's gory finishing moves. Luckily, the other developers showed us mercy and spared millions of players that humiliation. Number 23. Gears of War was composed by Kevin Ripple, who had previously composed Unreal Tournament 2004 and Unreal Championship 2. He based the game's score on the idea of destroyed beauty. Wow, artsy. Number 24. Marcus Phoenix was played by voice actor extraordinaire John DiMaggio, a man who has played everything from drunken robots to magical talking dogs. Too bad there aren't any bacon pancakes in this game. Number 25. Before DiMaggio was cast, actor Steve Bloom provided the voice of Marcus Phoenix. This can be seen in some of the game's earliest teaser trailers. Bloom is known for his portrayal of Marvel's Wolverine in animation and video games. Number 26. Marcus's brother to the end, Dom Santiago, was played by voice actor Carlos Ferro. Carlos also played the loyal friend of Ezio Auditore, Leonardo da Vinci, in Assassin's Creed 2 and its sequel, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Number 27. Cliff explained that the reason he cast Carlos Ferro as Dom Santiago was because he was tired of hearing Speedy Gonzales-type characters appearing in games, like Splinter Cell. Number 28. Dom's last name was originally Flynn, until producer Rod Ferguson saw a box of cigars on Cliff's desk with the name Santiago on them. Number 29. The developers originally considered letting the player choose the gender of Marcus's BFF, Dominic Santiago, who would go by the name Dominique if the player chose female. Clearly, that got scrapped. Number 30. Much like Cole, his voice actor Lester Spate is a retired athlete. He used to play football but never made it to the NFL. He also pursued a career in wrestling and now acting. Lester gained significant notoriety after his run as the character Terry Tate, office linebacker, in a series of Reebok commercials, the first of which were premiered during Super Bowl 37. Number 31. The main reason Lester Spate was cast as Augustus Cole was because of his high level of charisma, with Cliff claiming that Lester is a man anyone anybody would want to go to war with. Number 32, Augustus Coltrane Cole was named after the Epic Games level designer Phil Cole, while the character himself was based on Jamie Foxx's character from the film Any Given Sunday. Number 33, Damon Baird's whining and complaining was courtesy of voice actor Fred Tatasciore, who also plays Marcus's old war buddy Ty Caliso. Outside of the Gears series, Fred is known for his numerous portrayals as the animated Incredible Hulk. Number 34, Damon Baird is named after a childhood friend of Cliff Bleszinski's, named Mark Baird, whom Cliff describes as being kind of a dick, which fits. Number 35, all the Carmine brothers were played by actor Michael Goff, previously played Raphael in the 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, Deckard Cain from the Diablo series, and Gopher from Winnie the Pooh. Number 36, the menacing voice of General Rom was provided by acclaimed creature voice actor D. Bradley Baker, who also voiced the grave mind of Microsoft's other flagship shooter franchise, Halo. Number 37, during earlier developments of the game's story, Delta Squad consisted of team leader Marcus Phoenix, second in command Dominic Santiago, former pro athlete Damon Baird, and a faceless expendable rookie. After Lester Spate auditioned for the role of the rookie character, the developers decided to push the rookie aside and create a new character based on Spate's charismatic performance and named him Augustus Cole. They gave him Baird's characterization as the pro athlete instead and transformed the blonde-haired wonder into the underappreciated genius we know and love today. The rookie was still faceless, but at least was given a name, Anthony Carmine. Number 38, Marcus Phoenix's name has a deeper meaning than it seems. The name Marcus actually means warlike, while his last name Phoenix is a variant on the word phoenix, which is the name of a bird from Egyptian and Greek mythology known to be consumed by flames only to rise again from its own ashes. This is completely similar to Marcus's backstory. He was once a respected and accomplished soldier that fell from grace when he was given a prison sentence for abandoning his post, only to be released from his imprisonment years later when he rose from the darkness and saved humanity from the Locust Horde. Number 39, much like Marcus, there is a meaning behind the reoccurring family name Carmine. Carmine is a shade of red, and the characters in stories that are made for the sake of being killed off are often referred to as red shirts, making the Carmine family name a cruel foreshadowing of the fates of Anthony and Benjamin. Spoilers! Number 40, General Rom is named after the owner of an Indian restaurant that the employees of Epic Games would frequent. He must have spit in their food or something. Number 41, Gears of War doesn't actually take place on Earth, but rather on a fictitious planet called Sera. Sera is Ares spelled backwards, and Ares is the Greek god of war. His Roman equivalent is the god Mars. Number 42, Baird's looks are based on actor Dennis Leary, although a more unrealistic, muscular Dennis Leary. Number 43, Anna Stroud was based on a woman that broke Cliff's heart in the past. So far, she hasn't done anything of the sort to Marcus, but maybe Gears 4 will feature a development between them that's a little bit closer to reality. Number 44, at first, some of the game's artists overly sexualized the design of Anya, specifically by giving her bigger boobs. Cliff fought to make sure this didn't happen, and that they designed Anya realistically, thus making Gears of War one of the few video games to exaggerate the bodily features of men and not women. Good on you, Cliff. Number 45, the krill creatures from the first game are very similar to the Bioraptor creatures from the film Pitch Black starring Vin Diesel. Like the Bioraptors, the krill instantly kill anything that steps into the darkness and are stopped only by the light. Number 46, the Locust Boomers are named after robots of the same name featured in the short-lived 80s animated series Bubblegum Crisis, a show heavily influenced by the film Blade Runner starring Harrison Ford. Number 47, despite the fact that their size and look resemble that of a dinosaur, Brumacs were actually genetically engineered from apes. Number 48, in the Gears lore, the only female locusts are berserkers, and the only way that the locusts can breed is if the male drones chain the berserkers down and force themselves upon them. In hindsight, Cliff regrets writing this into the plot details and deems it was a really sick concept. He claims he was in a really dark place at the time. You think? Hopefully, it's not in Gears 4. Number 49, Gears of War has a rich backstory that the game vaguely touches upon. If you ever wanted to know more about it, you would have to have read several pieces of expanded universe materials like books and comics. Until now. The Gears story begins about a century before Dom breaks Marcus out of prison to liberate humanity of the Locust Menace. The original threat to humanity being an energy crisis. Isn't it always? The humans of Sera had depleted every resource of fuel and power they needed to survive. It wasn't until scientists discovered a once overlooked liquid known as emulsion, which could be converted into a means for near limitless power, putting an end to one of humanity's biggest struggles and opening the door for a brand new one to rear its ugly head. Emulsion plunged humanity into a worldwide gold rush, with every country setting out to extract extract and sell the glowy juice. Unfortunately, this caused the emulsion market to become oversaturated, sending Sarah's nations into an economic depression. Number 50. This economic collapse led to the 79-year-long conflict known as the Pendulum Wars, a planet-wide battle over the remainder of the planet's resources, namely emulsion, because if you couldn't pay for the resources, they would more than gladly pry them from the cold, dead hands of their enemies. The conflict consumed millions of lives, with only two factions remaining by the war's final years: the Union of Independent Republics, UIR for short, and the Coalition of Ordered Governments, known to fans everywhere as the COG. The two factions were caught in a stalemate until the UIR developed their very own ace in the hole that would guarantee their victory over the COG pigs, the Hammer of Dawn. Unfortunately for the UIR, the name of the game is Gears of War, and the COG stole the hammer before the UIR could deploy it, crowning them the victors of the Pendulum Wars and ensuring peace for the human race at long last. Number 51. This peace lasted for a mere 6 weeks, before an unexpected threat from below the planet's surface orchestrated a devastating attack that would decrease the total human population by 1/4 in a single day. This day was named Emergence Day by the COG. The enemy was one humanity had never faced before, a race of reptilian humanoid monsters known as the Locust Horde, plunging humanity into another long drawn-out war, this time to prevent the extinction of the human race as a whole. Number 52. Just who or what are the Locusts exactly? The game never explicitly says it, so we will. Remember how we said the world was plunged into something of a gold rush? Countries rushing to extract that sweet, sweet juice? Emulsion extraction became one of the most popular career choices for the people of Sarah, with many people setting out to mine it. Unfortunately for these mining communities, they soon fell ill with a sickness known as lambency, which slowly transforms humans into something else. The COG transferred all infected miners to the New Hope Research Facility, featured in Gears of War 2, to research lambency and the effects it had on humans. Eventually, things at the facility got out of hand, and the COG were forced to move the operations to a new facility on Mount Kadar, which had underground tunnels that led to the Hollow, where the infected humans escaped to breed for generations, eventually evolving into the Locusts, responsible for the near genocide of humanity. Number 53. Why did the Locusts attack humanity? Well, aside from the fact that the COG kind of turned their backs on these mining communities, the Hollow in which the Locusts live sits on top of a rather large deposit of emulsion. There is a level of lambency beyond the kind that created the Locusts, the parasitic lambent, which Marcus and his squad fighting Gears of War 3. The self-proclaimed leader of the Locusts, Mira, knew that if her people were exposed to the emulsion any longer than they already were, they would surely perish. Running out of time and options, Mira decided that the Locusts needed to claim the surface as their own at the expense of humanity, and it was either them or the humans. Don't you feel terrible for completing Gears of War 3 now? Number 54. Humanity didn't go completely unwarned of Emergence Day, or at least one human didn't. Marcus's father, scientist Adam Phoenix, discovered the Locust Horde well before the general public did, and actually knew of Queen Mira's plan to attack the surface several years beforehand. So why didn't he warn the COG? He wanted to resolve the conflict peacefully, promising Mira a cure for lambency in exchange for sparing mankind. But as we previously mentioned, Adam took too long, and Mira got impatient. Number 55. Despite being Queen of the Locusts and possessing a hatred for humanity, Mira herself is in fact still human. This is evident at the end of Gears 3, when she is still standing after Adam Phoenix kills all lambent cells on Sarah. Number 56. Mira isn't actually royalty. Her queen title was given to her by, well, herself. The self-proclaimed Queen of the Locusts is actually a descendant of the New Hope scientists that studied the miners suffering from lambency. Mira became disgusted with humanity after the COG turned their backs on the Locusts and forced them into the Hollow, where they would surely die. She took it upon herself to guide them towards a better tomorrow, seeing much more potential in the Locusts than she did in humans. Number 57. There is an achievement in the original Gears of War called Is It a Spider?, which requires the player to stick a grenade to 100 players in ranked multiplayer matches. The name of the achievement is a reference to the popular web series Red vs. Blue, made within the engine of Xbox's Halo Combat Evolved. It's specifically a nod to a scene in Season 1 when Agent Texas sticks Private Donut's head with a plasma grenade, and he doesn't seem to notice. When his teammates tell him something is stuck to his head, he asks, "Is it a spider? Get it off," before it explodes. Number 58. If you kill a Berserker on hardcore mode, you'll be rewarded with the achievement called My Love for You is Like a Truck. The name is a reference to the Love Among Freaks song Berserker, which contains the lyrics, "My love for you is like a truck, Berserker." Oh, that's actually kind of sweet. Number 59. The last bullet of a magazine in the campaign mode is always 25% stronger stronger than the rest. This was added to give the game another dose of suspense, and to give the player a well-earned heart attack. Number 60. Gears of War was released on November 7th of 2006 to critical acclaim and raked in tons of awards, including several Game of the Year awards from GameSpot, Official Xbox Magazine, G4 TV, the DICE Summit Awards, and more. The game was a financial success as well, selling over 1 million copies within its first 2 weeks and 3 million copies by the January of 2007, 3 months after its release. Number 61. Gears of War was the first game to dethrone Halo 2 as the most played game on Xbox Live. A crown Bungie shooter had firmly grasped from its release in November of 2004 until Gears was released 2 years later in November of 2006. Bungie would have their revenge though when they reclaimed their crown in September of 2007 when Halo 3 was released, but Gears of War held the top spot for almost an entire year. Number 62. The Gears of War Mad World ad was created using the game's engine and assets, as opposed to other cinematic game trailers and commercials that are typically pre-rendered scenes created out of engine. Number 63. The cover of Mad World used to promote Gears of War was originally created for the cult film Donnie Darko, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. Number 64. Not only was Mad World the tune chosen to hype Gears of War, it was also Cliff's personal anthem that got him through the divorce from his first wife. Number 65. Gears of War was released for Windows PC in June of 2007. It featured 3 exclusive multiplayer maps not found on the Xbox 360 version and added 5 new chapters to the campaign's 5th act, in which Delta Squad must confront the monstrous Brumac, an enemy that was teased but never fought against in the Xbox version. The PC version also filled a plot hole explaining why General Rom is on Tiro Pillar. Number 66. On March 20th, 2007, it was announced that New Line Cinema, the company behind the Lord of the Rings films, had acquired the rights to produce a Gears of War film that would be slated for a 2010 release. It never came to be. Not much was known about the film other than the fact that it would aim to blur the line between CGI and live-action filmmaking, and that it would likely serve as a prequel to the first game in the series, potentially answering questions like how Marcus Phoenix got his iconic scar. However, much like the Halo, BioShock, and Mass Effect film adaptations, it got caught in development hell with such issues as rewrites, shuffling directors, and budget drops, delaying it further and further and further until the film was no longer mentioned publicly. The last we heard of it was back in 2012. Number 67. To give Gears a deeper narrative, Epic recruit novelist Joshua Ortega to write the second installment. Ortega had also written comics for Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Spider-Man, and even several of the Gears of War comics. Number 68. One character that's easy to miss is Dom's wife, Maria. She is briefly mentioned in the original Gears of War when Dom and Baird bicker about Dom's association with the Stranded. Dom claims that he doesn't normally associate with the Stranded, but he's simply looking for somebody with their help. Later on, they meet with the Stranded leader, Franklin, who tells Dom, "No word on the lady yet." They were pretty confident in getting a sequel, huh? Number 69. Maria's emotionally heavy death in Gears of War 2 was Cliff's statement on the case of Terry Schiavo, a woman in a permanent vegetative state whose husband wanted to put an end to her suffering by removing her feeding tube, while her parents wanted Terry to continue life support regardless of the diagnosis that she would never recover. Judging by the scene's outcome, we can see that Cliff firmly believes in a person's right to death. Number 70. Originally, Ty was supposed to simply throw himself off of a cliff to end his life, but Cliff didn't think that was a brutal enough death and opted for the shotgun to the face we got in the final game instead, which he really had to push for. Number 71. Scourge was originally designed to be a Locust enemy class, much like Cantus or a Boomer. It wasn't until Scourge's artist James Hawkins finished the design that it was decided this Locust variation would become the main antagonist of Gears 2. Number 72. Maria Flores Santiago was played by actress Courtney Ford, who was a childhood friend of Cliff Bleszinski. She is also married to Hollywood actor Brendan Roth. Number 73. The picture of Dom and Maria featured in Gears of War 2 and packaged with the game's limited edition was drawn based off of a picture of Cliff and an ex-girlfriend of his. Number 74. Gears of War 2 was released on November 7th, 2008, exactly 2 years after the release of the original game. Number 75. Gears of War 2 sold 2 million copies by the end of its first weekend alone, a feat that took the original Gears of War a few months to accomplish. Number 76. In Act 1, Chapter 3 of the Gears 2 campaign, there are 3 hidden hats you can shoot off as your convoy departs for the battle at the very start of the mission. If you're quick and precise enough to shoot all 3 of the hats, every cog in the mission will be outfitted with Dizzy's signature hat. Even the Corpser's got a hat. Number 77. What's one thing the Cog and the Locust have in common? They both love a good slice of toast. In Act 4, Chapter 5 of Gears of War 2's campaign, there is a balcony you can walk onto in the Queen's Palace overlooking a pool of emulsion, of which Cole makes a comment about. On the balcony, you can find a box sitting between two pillars. If you shoot the box, it will break down, revealing a locust toaster. If you press X over it, you'll prepare some toast for Delta Squad. Hey, you don't want to face off against the Scourge on an empty stomach. Number 78. Karen Travis, the writer of Gears of War 3 and several Gears of War novels, has never actually played a Gears of War game in her life. It's nothing personal against the games themselves. Karen just finds it easier to work on a project like Gears without knowing too much or being too immersed in the game itself. The only things Karen uses as reference is the concept art from the games, which she claims she can learn more than enough from about the story she needs to write. Karen has also written for the Halo series, more specifically the Kilo 5 trilogy of books. Thank you, Karen. Number 79. Unlike his brothers, Clayton Carmine's face wasn't quite set in stone. It was left in the hands of the fans. Epic Games and Xbox Live set up an online poll of sorts, where players could vote for Clayton Carmine to either die or survive in Gears of War 3. The votes were cast by purchasing one of the Xbox Live avatar t-shirts, one saying, "Carmine must die," the other saying, "Save Carmine." 5-year-old spoiler alert here. The Save Carmine shirt sold more, thus explaining why Clayton Carmine survives. All the profits from these virtual shirts went towards the charity known as Child's Play, an organization that donates games and toys to children's hospitals around the world. Number 80. Clayton Carmine pays tribute to his fallen, literal brothers with a tattoo on his arm featuring their names and helmets. Number 81. The lambent enemies in Gears of War 3 were designed so that they could harm the player regardless of whether or not he or she was behind cover, encouraging the player to move around more frequently during combat to challenge their safety. Number 82. Chase Stratton was originally played by voice actor icon Nolan North during the character's brief appearance in Gears of War 2. He was going to be played by hip-hop artist Drake for Gears of War 3, but that plan fell through due to scheduling conflicts. He's instead voiced by actor Michael B. Jordan, known for his roles in the films Chronicle and Creed. Number 83. The CEO of Griffin Emulsion Incorporated, Aaron Griffin, is played by rapper Ice-T. In addition to playing Griffin, Ice-T released a new single with his old band Body Count to promote Gears of War 3. The song, called Gears of War, debuted with the game's trailer for Horde Mode 2.0. How was it that Epic was able to get the rapper involved? Turns out Ice-T is a huge Gears fan. Number 84. During Act 1, Chapter 1 of Gears of War 3, if you have Marcus unload a clip into the 4 symmetrical pipes after your first firefight atop the ship, a chicken will emerge from the 4th pipe. If you open fire on this chicken, it will transform into a raging, giant, lambent chicken. Oh, that also breathes fire. If you manage to kill this challenging Easter egg, it will explode into colorful confetti. Wow, talk about destroyed beauty. Number 85. If you complete a round of multiplayer on Gears of War 3's iteration of Gridlock without destroying any of the Ash people on the map, you will be treated to an instrumental version of Gary Joel's Mad World during the following round. Number 86. With the release of Gears of War 3, the franchise had sold 1 billion copies across all 3 games, making it the second franchise in Xbox history to reach that milestone. The first, of course, being Halo. Number 87. The initial idea behind Gears 3's Rom's Shadow DLC was to incorporate characters that played significant roles in the Gears of War comics, but had yet to be introduced to fans that just played the games. Michael Barrick is a prime example of this, as he was a fan-favorite character introduced in the comics. While Gears players already knew Ty Kaliso from Gears 2, he dies very early on in the game without receiving the exposure he deserves, but his character became popular through his more predominant appearance in the comic books. Also appearing in the DLC is Jace Stratton, another character with a significant role in the comic, yet Jace was kind of shoehorned into Gears 3 without a proper introduction. Number 88. Originally, Rom's Shadow DLC was to have a younger Clayton Carmine and Sergeant Jonathan Harper, a character from the Gears of War comics and collectible materials in Gears of War 2, be members of Zeta Squad. Harper was cut when Epic decided that, since Rom was back, it would be nice to see fan favorite Min Young Kim return one last time to invigorate some Gears of War 1 nostalgia. Carmine was cut to avoid overcrowding the squad, as the developers were content with the cast of characters they had chosen for the story. Number 89. Gears of War Judgment is the first game in the series to not be developed by Epic Games. It was instead created by Epic Games' European-based developer People Can Fly. The team behind the game Bulletstorm. Number 90. Gears of War Judgment's antagonist, General Karn, is actually a malformed Theron guard who could never quite get the hang of physical combat due to his handicap, branding him an outcast among the Locust community. He made up for this with his unusually high intellect, which rivaled even some of the Gears' highest ranking officers. The greatest example of Karn's tactical genius was Emergence Day itself, where he personally orchestrated and led the attack on humanity himself. Number 91. The giant spider-like monster Karn rides is called Shibboleth, a mutated corpser that the general considers to be his closest friend. When both of them were young, Karn found the creature abandoned and injured to the point where it couldn't walk. Empathizing with the creature's pain, Karn was able to nurse the creature back to health, restoring its ability to walk. From that point on, Karn and Shibboleth shared an unbreakable bond, until the monster known as Damon Baird slaughtered them both. Thanks, Baird. Number 92. During Gears of War Judgment's development, Sophia Hendrick and Garen Paddock's roles were reversed, with Sophia being the former UIR soldier and Paddock being the Onyx cadet. Even though their names and ages were significantly different, toward the end of the writing process, the writers decided that reversing the roles just seemed to make much more sense. Number 93. According to the Gears of War Judgment writer Rob Otten, despite what Paddock tells Baird and Cole at the end of the Aftermath campaign, Sophia is not dead, just missing in action. The writers chose to make her fate somewhat ambiguous, to leave future Gears writers with several story opportunities in the future. Thanks, guys. Number 94. In Act 2, Section 1 of the Gears of War Judgment campaign, you begin the mission on a city street filled with small shops. On the left side of the street, you can find a shop with a sign that reads, Carmine Family Life Insurance. Not only is this a reference to the Carmine family's poor luck during the Cog Locust War, it's a nod to a comedic video sketch shown at Comic-Con 2010, in which a member of the Carmine family unsuccessfully attempts to apply for a life insurance policy. Number 95. In January of 2014, it was announced that Epic Games had sold the rights to the Gears of War franchise to Microsoft. Similar to what Microsoft did for the Halo franchise with 343 Industries after original developer Bungie left the series, they tasked one of their first-party developers, Black Tusk Studios, with continuing the Gears of War franchise exclusively. Due to this change in direction for the studio, they renamed themselves the Coalition, a name much more fitting to the Gears universe. Number 96. While key players like Epic Games and Cliff Bleszinski have moved on from the Gears series, one crucial player from the old days has stayed behind to lead the Coalition and ensure that the next generation of Gears lives up to the last, and that person is series producer Rod Ferguson. Cliff describes Gears as being Rod's baby as much as it was his own, so the series is more than in capable hands. Number 97. The Coalition's first project was a remaster of the original Gears of War for the Xbox One, known as Gears of War Ultimate Edition. This remaster was released 9 years after the original release on Xbox 360 and contains all of the content previously exclusive to the PC version of the game, meaning Xbox players could finally take on the Brumac. Yes, I've been waiting for that. Number 98. Because he didn't have a unique character model in the original game, General Rom was completely redesigned from scratch for his appearance in Gears of War Ultimate Edition. They aimed to differentiate Rom's armor from other Locusts to establish his higher rank. This also made the character more intimidating than he already was in the original game. They added to the General's scariness by giving him more scars and deforming his face. Number 99. Gears of War 4 actually began development at Epic Games around the same time Gears of War Judgment was in the works. The developers spent 6 months on the project before abandoning it. Number 100. When the Coalition inherited Gears of War, Epic sent them all of the work they had done on Gears 4 prior to the sale of the franchise to Microsoft. But the Coalition only used some of it, and then created their own ideas. It was Epic's idea to have the franchise take place in the future, following the adventure of Marcus Phoenix's son JD and his friends. And though Epic came up with the new enemy faction's name, the Swarm, the creature designs that were created were not used by the Coalition. Number 101. Gears of War 4 is set 25 years after the events of Gears of War 3 and follows Marcus Phoenix's son JD Phoenix and his two friends Del Walker and Kate Diaz. The story takes place over a period of 24 hours and begins after JD and Del go AWOL from the COG for unknown reasons and discover a new threat to humanity known as the Swarm. Number 102. While his last name makes it it painstakingly obvious that JD's father is Marcus Phoenix, we see in the Tomorrow trailer that his mother is none other than Gear Officer Anya Stroud. JD's full name is James Dominic Phoenix, his middle name being a tribute to Marcus Phoenix's fallen brother in arms, Dominic Santiago. Fact number 103. Despite having had JD with Marcus, it was said by Baird in Gears of War Aspero Fields that one of the reasons Anya was so devoted to her military career was because she was incapable of having children of her own. Either JD is a miracle, or Baird is just wrong. Again, number 104. In Gears of War 4, the COG has become what producer Rod Ferguson describes as an overprotective parent, ushering the humans of Sarah into cities surrounded by large walls Donald Trump would be proud of, in an attempt to heighten the human race's population, which currently sits at a measly 100,000 at that moment in time. Number 105. As it turns out, not everybody enjoys being told how to live their lives. Funny that. Introducing The Outsiders, Gears of War 4's spiritual successors to the original trilogy's Stranded. Much like The Stranded, the Outsiders are a faction of humans that defy the COG and live within their own settlements outside their city walls. According to Rod Ferguson, the Outsiders were initially based off the hippie movement in the 60s, but were later decided that the group needed more of an edge. Developers now describe the Outsiders as something more akin to a motorcycle game. Number 106. Unlike Del and JD, Kate is not a gear, nor does she abide by the rules of the COG. She is an outsider, a survivalist that knows how to live off the land. JD and Del meet her during their adventure, and despite their conflicting backgrounds, they form a pretty strong bond relatively fast. Unfortunately for JD, Kate's mother, Raina, who is a devout outsider, does not approve of their friendship, or whatever may become of it in the future. Finally made it, folks, 107. You fight more than just buff lizard men in Gears of War 4, as the game introduces yet another faction that has a beef with humanity known as DBs. DBs are a robotic race created by the COG to complete a variety of tasks, from construction work to exploration and, of course, combat. But as tons of AI films have warned us, and tried again to warn us, machines eventually develop an urge to slaughter humans, and the DBs are no exception. They will stop at nothing until JD and his friends are dead. Thanks for watching 107 facts about Gears of War. Which game in the series is your favorite? Who are your favorite characters? Comment below and let us know. We want to know. We have new videos dropping every week, so let us know what game you want us to cover next. And if by chance you like the sound of my voice, go to my channel and check out me voicing other stuff. And if you like getting more from your games, subscribe to the Leaderboard, where we help you game smarter.